Greetings, everybody, and welcome along. You join us today for what will be the second episode of Decline and Fall. Our friend and co-presenter, Kit Clarenberg, will be on in just a moment. But before I do that, I wanted to come on and just do a couple of technical announcements, which is that the number of platforms we're now streaming to has now dramatically increased after the technical problems we had the other day. So currently, you can find that all streams in the future will be simulcast on Twitter or X, depending upon if you're down with Elon Musk or not. They're on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitch and on Instagram. So we've got a variety of options there. I can see we've got somebody joining us on Twitch, and on Twitch you can access the chat on there. I'm not sure how that works on Instagram and on Facebook as yet, but we are expanding the range. The program today is going to be having a variety of interesting topics on it, which we will get to in just a moment. But just as a precursor or a prefiguring, shall we say, to our discussion, I see that there was much excitement in MAGA land over the appointment of former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard to, Trump's nomination of her to the post of Director of National Intelligence, which is meant to be like the coordinating role which brings together the myriad different intelligence agencies inside the United States. And this, of course, kicked off a lot of excitement in the camp that are the perpetual apologists for Donald Trump, of which there are, of course, several, and or many, I should say. Now, the thing about this that I would point out is that Gabbard is another case of somebody who is been marketed to you and been marketed by the intelligence services, because she is, of course, a spy. Tulsi Gabbard is a spy. This is not a speculation on my part. You can go to her Instagram page, her various social media platforms, and find references to her service with the National Guard in an intelligence capacity, and deployment with the National Guard in an intelligence capacity to places like, I believe she served in Eastern Africa for a while. She's done various other things. So this is somebody who is a spy, works for military intelligence. That's a spy, and has been so for a number of years. So there's no that again. This is not speculation, and I know that there is the usual cacophony of people saying, "Oh no, she's this, she's that, she's the other." She's a spy, and I know that the Biden administration classified her as something of a rogue agent or something, but that is simply not the case. The Biden administration offered this, said that she was some sort of national security threat, but this was always bullshit, because if the military and the intelligence people for whom she works, or for whom she works at least on a part-time basis, actually fought that, then they'd have withdrawn her security clearance. They didn't do that. So that announcement from Biden's team was just like political opportunism. It was an announcement that didn't signify anything at all. So Trump appointing a spy to be the Director of National Intelligence actually makes complete sense. But she's not some anti-deep state warrior. This is somebody who's been deeply involved with intelligence networks for quite a number of years now. And she might have played the role of oppositionist back a while ago But this was always just garbage. I mean, she was always playing a role. I think her entire presidential run back in 2020, I mean, it was alleged at the time the whole thing was done to essentially drain votes away from the Sanders campaign. I mean, that was probably true. Not that the Sanders campaign was a threat, but they didn't really want it taking off. They wanted as many people to drain votes away from it as possible, and indeed that is what she did. So this is somebody who's always worked in an intelligence capacity. So why should it be the case that she's not the perfect candidate to be, head of or have oversight over these intelligence agencies? She's been doing intelligence work for decades now. So reject the advertising, reject the bullshitting, look at the actual hard facts with regard to the person in question, and you'll find that the half of these fucking supposed anti-deep state warriors, like their objection to like the American intelligence machinery comes down to the fact that it doesn't do exactly what they want at all times. That's their objection, and that's how therefore you should analyze these people accordingly. So before we get started on the program, I'm just going to go through the chat and say give a hello to who's there. So we will be coming onto our main program in just a moment, but before then I will go through those who are in the chat so far. So we have Svetlana in Moscow, hello to you. We have Victor, we have Grassy Knoll over there in Seattle, Washington. We have Daniel, who's on a train heading to Bristol. Well, hope the reception holds up for you there, comrade. We have Kawa Justiniano coming to us from Copenhagen. We have Potted Rodent joining us, and we have Vera, and we also have Rusa, who is coming to us from the decaying Berlin. Well, I could go for anywhere in the West these days. We have Richard on Twitch. Hello to you. Almir from the once and future Yugoslav state of Slovenia. And we have somebody here, just another parasite, who says, surely Britain's immigration problem will solve itself soon enough, because at the rate of the current decline, nobody will want to come here. Polish migration peaked ages ago, with most now just not bothering. Also, even in the third world with ever-growing Chinese investment. There's a good point. With the conditions, if conditions improve significantly over the rest of the world, then the urge to actually come here and actually join the migration waves will be lessened. But I will say this, like, for all that, British imperialism is clearly in a state of decline. Everybody knows that now. Everybody can see it. But the British ruling class still can move around a lot of capital, and they can still bring people in. And the image of Britain isn't quite as diminished as we all know it is. Now, we, those of us who have a certain understanding of the world, can see the decline. A lot of other people can't. And there's also decent money to be made in comparison to what you can make at home, particularly if you come here and work in like the health sector, where a lot of jobs in the health sector here are quite low paid. They are done on a casual basis, especially in care. So it's quite a struggle to get British candidates to fill some of those roles. So they do attract people from overseas because, again, like, the British currency is still worth a hell of a lot more than a lot of maybe people's domestic currencies. So coming here and working in care for a while can actually make you quite a bit of money. So whereas, we can see the decline quite clearly, people can still make money coming over here and working. And as long as they can do that, and of course the employers are more than happy to bring them, the people will continue to migrate here to work. Because as long as the labour demand is there and the reward is good enough, people will come. That's the point. But we should get to the point, but we won't get to this point for many years now, where people don't have to flee their homes and move halfway across the planet just to be able to earn a living. That's something that will come to an end as the the battle for self-determination is won, and then as the battle for working class power is won. Hello to T.G. Wilson, who joins us. Hello to Robeson in Indonesia. Hello to Potted Rodent, who says, Tulsi, head of the propaganda machine. Good point. Richard on Twitch says, Gabbard is a chancer. So, hello to 150 of you who are watching so far. Be sure to like and share the stream if you haven't done so already. We will continue. So, good afternoon to Comrade Jason and Comrade Terry. And also, we have here a message from Rusa, who says, I was listening to a Polish section of the International Radio Belarus, and there was an interview with a Pole in Britain from a communist party aligned with the DPRK. Don't remember the name of that party. And he mentioned your party among the other socialist parties in the UK as a fraud and Trotskyites, and that you're doing nothing and are simply an online presence and nothing more. Well, I don't know who this Polish guy is, but he's entirely wrong. Like, it's like we do in-person activity a hell of a lot, where like the comrades in London are always attending the Palestine solidarity demos, do in-person meetings. So whoever that is either a fool or a liar, basically. And I don't know which communist party it would be aligned with the DPRK, possibly the NCP, but NCP comrades come to our party's meetings. This guy's a liar. There you go. I'll just say it straight up. Like, he either doesn't know the facts about which he purports to know, or he's just lying. So, I can disprove him just by pointing to various things posted on the internet from the last 2 weeks, and we're doing an in-person event this weekend. So, you're just fucking wrong, mate. To coin a phrase. Right. So, moving on. Hello to Abtin, who joins us and says, good afternoon, everybody. It feels great now that Trump is back and everything will be fixed and move forward. Yes, and who wouldn't have confidence in the Doge, which is, of course, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's entirely fake Department of Government Efficiency. That is a fake department. Let's just get this out of the way straight away, because it's a fake department for a number of reasons. First of all, they're talking about saving money on the budget. What's the biggest what's the biggest single component of the American budget? It's the military budget. Are Elon and Vivek going to look at that? No, of course they're not. Elon's not going to look at it because he's a major Pentagon contractor. So do you really think he's going to shit where he eats? Of course he's not. Vivek's not going to look at it because he just follows orders. He's not an original thinker. He got through the primaries. He got into the primaries because he was doing basically a Trump tribute act that Trump appreciated and gave him a job. He's given him a meaningless job. Do you know what ideas this Department of Government Efficiency will come up with? It'll be coming up with boilerplate GOP ideas that have been kicking around in the American bourgeois political system for 30 plus years. In fact, for longer, 40 plus years. It'll be stuff like privatizing Social Security and cutting it. It'll be stuff like cutting back on welfare programs, doing away with the very minimal amount of government provided healthcare that Americans get. So cutting Medicare and stuff like that, and the other ideas that basically only tickle the fancy of the U.S. Ruling class. That's what these guys will be coming up with. So don't take that seriously in the slightest. It's classic Musk, which is it's all branding, not very much of anything else. Like hell, he's going to cut government expenditure when he benefits so much from it. Meaningless dribble. Right. Alexander Lukta says, Tulsi Gabbard is also a Hare Krishna devotee, which surprised me. She's in some weird cult, isn't she? That is close to the BJP. Potted Rodent says, Trump is out swamping the swamp. Indeed, he is, Potted Rodent. So make sure to beware of swamp creatures and their apologists, of which there are many. There are numerous apologists for the Trump regime floating around out there at the moment in the online world. I'll leave it to you to imagine who those are. Risto Kostadinov says, did you see the Estonian PM barking, we will punish Beijing for supporting Russia? Well, I'll believe that the Estonian Prime Minister's words have any meaning when the Estonian army marches on Beijing, which is a rather tough one because they'd have to load them onto the Estonian Navy first. Then they'd have to go to the opposite side of the world. Like the old Russian Baltic fleet sailing all the way to confront the Japanese in 1904 and sinking half their boats along the way, but on a much smaller scale. So these clowns in the Baltic states are just best ignored, really. Potted Rodent says Tulsi has old ties to Modi, I believe. Yes, and still has a fan base, strangely enough, in the extremely online world. Evan Sten, greetings to you out in Sweden. And we've got Just a Maverick coming in. Hello to you. We have Risto Kostadinov saying, I love the Baltic state politicians being so aggressive despite combined having less people than Moscow. Yeah, well, short man syndrome is also afflicts countries. Risto Kostadinov says, I'm also from a former Yugoslav state. We were called the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia because Greece was blocking us being recognized as just the Republic of Macedonia. Yeah, well, it's all a bit petty, isn't it? It truly is. What do the Greeks think they're going to get out of that? What, the reincarnation of Alexander the Great's going to come back? Or what, Philip of Macedon's going to return? What was the motivation for that? I heard also that the Greeks, like some Greek nationalists, maintain like a territorial claim on Macedonia. I don't know if that's true or not. Greetings to Waverley 610, and also to Kent from Minneapolis. Hello to Jacob the Squirrel. Are you the Are you the squirrel that was put down the other day in New York? Are you coming to us from beyond the grave, or was that Peanut the squirrel? Hello to Paul over there on Twitch, who's finding the Twitch stream very reliable. That's good, because all future live streams are going to be carried on these platforms. So YouTube, X, Patreon. Patreon will have the audio recording, Instagram, Rumble, etc. So this is the lineup we're going to be using from now on. Hello to Sammy, who says, "What is my party? Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist." I will post the link to our site in the chat. If you're a communist or communist inclined in Britain, then we are the party that you should join, to be quite blunt about it. So I'm going to just post the link to our site there. You can find out more details. Hello to Frank, who says, "I hope Iran clearly say we have responsibility to protect the people of Gaza from genocide." Well, they have said things along those lines. I see that today the Iranian government, which is of course it's the government headed by Pezeshkian, has agreed to start negotiations with the International Atomic Energy Agency again. But I can't see that going anywhere, precisely because the Americans will block it. Even if the Comprador element in Iran wants to agree a new nuclear deal, which they do, by the way, they do want to do that, but they won't be able to, precisely because like the Trump regime will block that instantly. They won't agree to it. I mean, it's Trump that basically kiboshed the deal last time, if you remember. He basically train wrecked the JCPOA, and then it never got off the ground again. So like Trump and the Republicans aren't going to give any kind of deal this time around, even though that deal was actually the smarter way to work. It was the smarter end of the imperialists who agreed to do that, because they realized something that the knuckleheads in the Trump gang don't, which is that the weakness of Iran is not is not in the masses or in its military establishment. The weakness of Iran lies in the presence of comprador capitalists in Iran still, and that's the weakness. And that that group can be strengthened by giving them what they want, which is deals that enable them to access markets and capital from the imperialist countries, then that's the way to undermine and destroy the Islamic Revolution in Iran, not direct military assault. Direct military assault for the US will be a disaster, and they will lose. The much, much better way for the US is the more insidious way. Boost the compradors, make sure that they stay in power in terms of the government, make sure that their influence grows, and try and divide Iran on that basis, with a sort of a civilian government which is it can show results to the population to keep itself in power, and dividing the system in Iran on that basis between the civilian government, the military, and the revolutionary wing. And that's the way to do it. That's the way Obama's administration was trying to do it. Again, that's the smarter play by the imperialists. The more knuckle-headed and aggressive plays by Trump are reflective of the fact that, first of all, there's a certain element within the U.S. imperial state which is hyper-aggressive, which has never forgiven the Iranians for kicking out the Shah. It's never forgiven the Iranians for humiliating the U.S. by taking over their embassy, and they harbour dreams of either reinstalling the Shah or like bringing in some like other strange comprador types like the MEK or something like that, or breaking up Iran entirely and like fostering like separatist movements like the Kurds and the Balukis. So that's all the tendency that is strongly present in the Trump administration. So to go back to this IAEA thing, like Rafael Grossi can go and say whatever he likes when he's meeting with the Pezeshkian and co. Without the US on board, and the US will block this, then there's no deal, because Europe doesn't represent jack shit, as we've discovered over and over again. The Europeans might think that a deal with Iran would be better, and that dealing with the Iranian compradors would be better, but I think they also overestimate the strength of the Iranian compradors, and of course the Europeans can't insist on anything. If Trump says no, they won't do anything. So if for nothing else, Iranians concerned about the activities of the Pezeshkian government can guarantee that that government will fail, thanks to the heroic endeavours of Comrade Donald. Spurious Furious, hello to you. Rista Costantino says, Trump might scrap the education department. He is that insane. I doubt he will. I think what he'll do is he'll appoint some like arch privatizer to them. He'll appoint some like lunatic who uses the department to essentially funnel money to the private sector. That's what he'll do. Like, I know it's a long-term demand of like various like libertarians and people in the Republican base to do away with the education department, but I just don't think that that's going to be possible for him to do. So expect him to use it as a means of funneling money to the private sector. That's what he'll do with it. Sammy says, I like them, that is the CPG-BML, but I'm not sure how promising they are in terms of growth and achievements. Would be nice to see a video covering their activities overall. Well, look at the website to see what we're doing. We make no bones about it that like we're a relatively small organization, but like the fact is that if you, I'll address you directly, Sammy, think that we've got the right line on things, then why not get involved in what we're doing? Why not help us build the party? This is the process we're engaged in now is of rebuilding a communist party in this country from the ground upwards, from basically a starting point of almost zero. So everybody who agrees with us, if you agree with our line, if you agree with the analysis we put forward, then you should join us in doing this. I mean, we've all been through this hesitation where we want to wait for something bigger to come along, but something bigger isn't going to come along unless you get involved in building it. So I would appeal to you to do just that. Grassy Knoll says, Elon Musk says he has found $2 trillion of waste he can cut from the federal budget. I wonder if he will include the federal tax credit for electric vehicles. No, he won't be doing that. Look, there was a researcher a while ago who found that I think it was at least $3 trillion that had gone missing from the Pentagon budget. Like, that was a few years back. It's probably much more now. The CIA's budget is classified. No one is even allowed to know what goes into it. So is Elon going to be cutting that? No, he's going to be cutting the things that benefit working class and poor people. That's what he's going to be doing. Hare Krishna itself is a Western intelligence operation like Falun Gong, says Abtin. In Iran, we have another one, the Baha'i faith. Yeah, I knew a Baha'i person a while ago. Very strange individual. Almir says, last time it was the fault of Pompeo and Bolton. I wonder what the excuse will be this time. Well, look, this is feudal shit, It's feudal shit because, I mean, what I mean by that is, like, in the feudal period, if you wanted to criticize something the state was doing, but you couldn't criticize the king, what you would say was, it's the evil advisors. It is not Louis XIV's fault that the peasants are starving to death. It is the evil advisors. We must get rid of the cardinal. It's not Henry VIII's fault that we lost the war and Britain blew all its money or the Kingdom of England blew all its money on a ship that sank as soon as it was launched. It's the evil advisors. I mean, this is the same shit that will be done with Trump. And to be honest, it's the same shit that would have been done with Harris by the left. Let's be perfectly fair here. It's the same shit that's always done by people who are bought into these bullshit projects. It's been to bourgeois politics. If by some miracle, well, I don't even need to use Sanders as an example. We can use Obama. Obama always had a cult around him that was making excuses for him. Oh, it's not him. It's, he's held back by Max Baucus, if anybody remembers him. He's held back by Hillary Clinton. He's held back by the moderate Democrats. He's held back by the racists in the GOP. He's held back by the dodgy advisors. If only he could get rid of all of those things, then we'd see the real Obama. For Obama, see Trump. Like, these people are in a cult. Like, it's like faith-based shit with bourgeois politics because there's nothing real there, unless you're like a CEO or maybe let's be generous, you're in like the top 20% income brackets in the United States. You're not getting anything out of Trump. Nor were you getting anything out of Biden. Nor were you getting anything out of Obama. Like, so anybody who's not in that top 20%, the people who still believe in the institutions of the United States, well, then you're stuck. You're screwed, basically. It's going to be the case that you're essentially gaining nothing from this. So you have to, if you're, again, a working class person who still believes in this, then you're getting scammed. Some people will draw the right conclusion and say, oh, fuck this. Others will keep on making excuses like, oh, it's the deep state working against him. It's his own cabinet working against him. The cabinet he appointed. It's this, it's that. No, it's the system. It's not about individuals. It's not just Trump. You could put fucking Karl Marx in charge of the US state, US government, US federal government. It would operate in pretty much the same way. You know, you can't, no single president can turn this thing around, because like, how could you do that in 4 years? You know, Trump's going to overturn the power of the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the DEA, and all the other alphabet agencies? Of course he's not. Any more than Obama was going to take on the banks, you know, the banks that pay for his campaign, the banks who approved his cabinet. This is stupid stuff. This is fairy tale shit. And like, until people grow up and stop like falling for the lies. And again, like, I don't say this to demean anybody. Look, we all grow up, as I say repeatedly, and get our heads filled with bullshit in the West about the system, about democracy, about Western values, you name it, it's been bullshitted about. Yeah, we all go through periods in our life through, you know, no fault of our own, where we absorb this shit and like it manifests in our responses to things. Okay? It happens. But the thing is, it needn't happen. Like, there's alternative ways of communicating now. There's more information available. Like, stop reading the bourgeois press and believing it. Stop investing in these figures. Like, it's not just about Trump. It's about everybody post-2008. Yeah? Because the ruling class have held up various different figures at various different times and have said to you, oh, well, no, you know, follow them. Follow him. Follow her. You know, follow Obama. He's a black guy. He's got to be radical, right? No. Follow Corbyn. You know, he's got a beard. He's got an allotment. He, you know, he makes cucumber jam. He's going to be different, isn't he? No. Follow Sanders. You know, the cranky old Jewish fella from Vermont. He's different, right? No. Follow Trump, the loud, obnoxious, stake-addicted fake billionaire and multiple bankrupts. He's an enemy of the system, right? You know, and again, like, it just comes down to nothing, because all of these supposed revolts against the system are all things that take place within the system, run by people with varying degrees of loyalty, but still loyalty to the system as it stands, to capitalism as it stands, to imperialism. And that goes for everybody. That goes from everybody from Sanders to Trump, from Corbyn to Boris Johnson to Nigel Farage. All these people are fundamentally committed to the system. Doesn't matter how much noise they make, how much they swear that they're radical and want to tear down the deep state, or want to have a nicer, fairer society if you're Jeremy Corbyn, or just want to get the American people healthcare in the form of Bernie Sanders. Though I think I made him sound more like Yogi Bear there. It's all the same thing. When it comes down to it, all these people are committed to maintaining the American or British imperialist system. Let's go further afield. We've talked before about Marine Le Pen and Jean-Luc Mélenchon and the Nouveau Front Populaire or Rassemblement National. Well, all whether it's on the right in the form of Le Pen or on the left in the form of Mélenchon, what are these people committed to? Giving a makeover to the decaying French imperialism. That's what they're committed to. Strip it all away. That's the thing. Strip the layers off. Strip the layers of advertising away and get these political phenomenon reduced down to their core, their essence. And the essence is that all of these waves since 2008 have represented people who want to tweak the system. And that's worse than those who are its open defenders, because the system can't be tweaked, it can't be reformed, it can't be fixed, not in the interest of the working class anyway. So all of these people are frauds. They might not know they're frauds, they might even be sincere, but they're trying to sell you something which fundamentally is not a real thing. It's not a real possibility. Right. Russo says, what happened to Hinkle? His new identity is questionable. He still promotes Trump. Is he still a Stalinist? Well, I haven't watched the video, but I'm reliably told by people who have watched it that like Hinkle's stuff, like he uses the Trump name to basically discuss what a president should do. So like, I don't know whether it's right to say he supports Trump. I mean, like a lot of his stuff is very clickbaity, and I wouldn't engage in that. But like that video where he was talking about Trump's cabinet appointments, like he did make it pretty clear like where he was coming from, and it wasn't like a pro-Trump position. But again, like the fact that he does a lot of clickbaity shit will keep getting him into trouble, and like whatever he's gaining out of it isn't. I don't think he's politically worth it. Mac Williams says, didn't know but Rubio's family actually fled the Batista regime. So much for being a victim of communism. Yeah, that's been known for a while, but Anya Parampil is the one that wrote about it in her book, which is a book well worth reading, however much I disagree with her political conclusions. Richard says, and this is on Twitch, why are Gen Z turning right-wing? Bourgeois media keeps saying. Well, look, if it's the bourgeois press, like the chances are that the phenomena is restricted to some influencers. Look, there'll be Gen Z people, like people in their early 20s, late teens, who are turn right-wing. Yeah, there will. There'll be some who turn communist. Like, the bourgeois press, like, love to bullshit about generations. Look, I'm of the millennial generation. We're forgotten now, except by those of us who are still in, like, media positions. But the big thing about millennials back in 2008, during the defining moment of our existence, which is the economic disaster that took place then, well, the thing about the millennials was supposed to be that we were these sort of bitter people who were clashing with the boomers, yeah, and like that we were property-seeking aspirants. Now, yeah, some of us were like that, most definitely, but most of us can't afford a fucking property, and it's nothing to do with boomers and everything to do with deliberately cultivated house price booms that only benefit banks and property developers. That's the thing. But we were told that we were in a clash of generations with the boomers. That was the thing that was supposed to be defining for us. So like Gen Z going right wing, there'll be some Gen Zers who like turn to like, I don't know, Nigel Farage, Reform, Trump, fascism. Yeah, systems in crisis. A lot of young people are going to turn to things which seem radical but actually aren't. But that's not just restricted to young people. That's like everybody who's going through that process. They say that the young have more enthusiasm and more vigor for these things, and perhaps that's true. But again, like it's much more about we are in a generalized state of crisis, and as is always the case, when there is a general state of crisis, but the proletariat hasn't made a strong move yet, those who are turning against the system will cast their eyes around for something to latch onto, something to help them understand their situation. And the thing that's being promoted on social media very heavily, especially on X, is like right-wing shit. So a lot of young people will get into right-wing shit. Some of them will go serious about it. Some of them will pick it up for a few years and then get demoralized and fall out of it again. Like, I am not that bothered about it because, you know, I was into all kinds of stupid shit, like anarchism. When I was 19, 20, I got over it. And the stronger the class struggle gets, the more empty, like fascism will seem. I'm convinced of that. And the more that younger people will come to see the emptiness of it. Hello to Cortez, who's catching a rare live. Right. Hello to Pittsburgh Dude out there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Lena says, which US Communist Party should I join? I'm currently trying to join the PSL. Well, investigate the ACP is what I would say. I don't think the PSL are worth your time. I think they're derived from a Trotskyite outfit. I think their approach to Leninism is largely a joke. The ACP is still a new thing, still has a way to go to obviously prove itself, as all new parties do. But there's more promise in that than there is the PSL. Trust me on that one. But do your own investigation. Don't take my word for it. I haven't since set foot in the United States since 1997. So for all that the online world links us closest together, I'm not aware of the exact conditions that you face. So investigate the ACP, look at its platform, look to see if there's an organization local to you, Lena, that you can join, and take it from there. Jacob the Squirrel confirms that Peanut was his friend. Well, solidarity with the squirrel community in this difficult time. Right. Alexander Lukter says, making some long-gone golden age of empire of one's country the core of one's identity is just sad. Make the polis Athens great again. Yes, very true. Rusa says, Poland's fascist regime is so aggressive, all opposition is organising in Belarus with Lukashenko and his people's support. That's interesting. That's interesting. It helps explain also the rabid hostility of the Poles. Okay, well, Lena, you're reacting in the typical way to anybody who mentions the ACP. Look, the MAGA communist thing, just to pick up on this, as far as I know, like that was like a thing that like Haz and Hinkle and some others did for a while. They've discarded it now. Look, go and do your investigation. Stop reacting like someone's poured acid on you, okay? Stop getting triggered so easily. Investigate the party. Read its platform. Look at what it stands for. Go and look at the online work that people like Midwestern Marx do. Don't just like have this like vomit like response because of what things you've seen on Twitter. Seriously. Do a serious investigation. If you still don't want to join it, I can't say that you're right or you're wrong because it's your country, not mine. I can only say what I've observed, and what I've observed is that there's a certain promise in the ACP. Like, get over this like internet shit, seriously, because you're not going to get anywhere like just believing like some shit that people post about the ACP online and reacting to it in this like visceral way. Like, now, it's not to say that the ACP is beyond criticism. No one is beyond criticism. But let's criticize for things that are real. There's so much criticism of the ACP that I've seen posted online is just simply lies. It's just something that some fucking idiot has made up. So stop just following what some online dickheads say. Do your own investigation. Like I say, do your own investigation. If you don't like what they actually stand for, not what somebody says they stand for online, not what some fucking dopey leftist in the United States says they stand for, but what they stand for in terms of the things that are written in their documents, things that they have committed to officially, things that they've done officially. Look at that. Stop looking at all this stupid shit that like American leftists post about them. Because I've looked at this and the whole giant heap of it is just lies. It's just something people just flat out make up. Right. You're saying you're calling Midwestern Marx Nazbols. Right. I'm convinced you don't know what a national Bolshevik is. Do you mean by Nazbol that they're followers of Eduard Limonov and Alexander Dugin? I mean, I know Haz has said some things that I don't agree with about Dugin, but like Midwestern Marx aren't Nazbols. You're discrediting yourself by saying things like that. You're making yourself look stupid because you fundamentally, clearly don't understand what a Nazbol is, and you don't understand what you haven't bothered to research what Midwestern Marx and the ACP actually stand for. You're just repeating some dumb shit you've seen on the internet. Fuck's sake, do better. Seriously, you're not going to get anywhere like that. Just repeating like these dumb knee-jerk shit from these pointless American leftists. Like, make more fucking effort. Like Mao said, no investigation, no right to speak. Investigate. And I don't mean reading a fucking tweet. Jesus fucking Christ, you fucking numpties. Seriously. Like, why is this an acceptable way to carry on? Seriously. Like, you're calling yourself a communist and you're basing your judgments on, what, tweets from anonymous accounts with fucking, who call themselves, I don't know, Soviet Sovcom 86 or something, who swears that he, she, it, they, them is the biggest communist on Twitter, and they say anonymously that, I don't know, Haz is receiving payments directly from the Kremlin, or like, you know, Midwestern Marks are secretly followers of Eduard Limonov. This is stupid. This is stupid. Just fucking investigate properly. Otherwise, you're nothing more than just some sad little bastard sat around reading Twitter all day. Read a fucking book. At least read the ACP's own website, for fuck's sake. What about Caleb Maupin? Caleb Maupin is no longer a communist. He calls himself an innovationist. I have absolutely no idea what that means. But as he's no longer a communist, I see absolutely no reason to engage with him anymore. Because he is clearly involved in a project which is anti-communist and reactionary. So this happens a lot. People decide they're a communist. They decide that they are going to lead the great American Revolution, and when the workers don't follow them, they have a strop and decide they're not communists anymore. Plenty of people in America and Britain have gone down that path, and it doesn't end well for them. Jacob the Squirrel says, do we think that Washington will expect Europe and NATO to continue the war with Russia while the US moves on to Taiwan and Iran in the next 4 years? Well, I would say they've been backing away from the Ukraine thing for quite some time now. And I think that the US probably knew, in fact, no, scratch that. They definitely knew that this was fucked after the Ukrainian supposedly big offensive in the Zaporozhye region last year, midpoint of last year. They knew that it was fucked then. So they decided that they were going to go into a holding pattern, try and just keep the war going and hope that the sanctions would kick in or that the Russian economy would collapse. They knew that militarily they weren't going to get anywhere after that. They've tried various different things to unbalance the Russians since then, the latest of which was the Kursk raid, and that has not gone well. It's cost them tens of thousands. I mean, estimates vary, but like we're looking at least 30,000 killed and wounded, 30,000 out of action, shall we say, in Kursk. And the reason why the Russians haven't just wrapped it all up and thrown them out quickly is that, again, they can lure more and more Ukrainians into a giant cauldron and blow them to pieces. That, and of course the Russians' cautious approach to these things anyway. So this is an ongoing disaster, but the concern of the US imperialists, and again this is completely bipartisan, same policy will be followed by Trump as is being followed now by Biden, as would have been followed by Harris, because it's not their policy, it's the policy of the state, is that they will slowly back away. They will try and dump it on the Europeans and the British, principally, and try and get them to carry it on. And what they will try and do is just keep the Kiev regime afloat. This is why I say there's not going to be negotiations. There isn't. All of the peace plans put forward thus far have basically been ruled out, correctly so, by the Russians as being unacceptable, which they are. They will remain unacceptable. So what are they going to do? What is going to happen is that the US will slowly back out. They will tell the Europeans to keep the Kiev regime afloat. There's talk of replacing Zelensky, but I don't think they will. Because as soon as you start pulling at any of these strings, the Kiev regime is like, anybody remember Jenga? The old sort of tower block building game? Where like you would like pull out blocks and put them on top or put them in other locations. The Kiev regime now is like a late stage Jenga tower that is built up to it's built up balancing on like a very narrow single like a pillar of crossed blocks. Everything else around it has been pulled out. If you pull out any of those blocks at the bottom, then the whole thing is going to fall over. If you pull out the Zelensky block now, like what you're going to unleash, even if you say you're going to have some sort of election or you just appoint somebody else, what you are going to do is destabilize the whole thing, because his role here is still that of being the center of political power in Kiev. There's multiple competing mafia-type groups in Kiev, all of which are sort of held in check by the fact that the imperialists are solidly behind Zelensky. They pull Zelensky off the board here. If they take him out of the equation, what's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is that the whole thing is going to go pop. You're going to get all of these mafia-type operations start fighting against each other like rats in a sack. And the command and control structure of the Ukrainian state is going to fall to fucking pieces. So the fact is they will try and leave Zelensky there. They will try and prop up his rule. If they remove him, it will probably be a mistake because things will fall apart quicker. If he stays where he is, it will doubtless be a disaster, because then things will absolutely fall to pieces again. So they're kind of stuck. What will happen is, again, there will be no open negotiations here. Trump will make some noises. The Democrats will accuse him of treason. There'll be a tacit agreement that they're moving to other fields of battle. I mean, Iran's going to fare no better for them, by the way, than the war against Russia. And it comes with even more risks. China's going to fare no better for them either. But they are going to try and rebuild their stocks of weaponry, rebalance themselves, and then try somewhere else, basically, because they've lost this one. But what they are going to try and force the Russians to do is to take as much of Ukraine as possible in order to try and then turn Ukraine into a giant sinkhole, which is going to absorb like gigantic amounts of the Russian budget. I think the way the Russians will handle it, if they have to go further, is that they will not administer Ukraine directly themselves. I don't think they'll end up doing that. I think the plan, if one exists, is that an independent Ukraine will be restored. I think that what will be restored is what the Russian government will say. And again, this is my guesswork rather than analysis, is that the Maidan regime, of which, of course, Zelensky was the head, was wholly illegitimate. It came about via a coup. That there was a legitimate government that existed in Kiev prior to 2014. This was forced into exile in violation of the Ukrainian constitution that existed at the time, and in violation of agreements that were in place between Russia and the West. Therefore, all of the regimes that have existed since 2014 in Ukraine have been illegitimate. So therefore, they will restore an interim government over Ukraine, which will administer the country outside of, well, however many regions the Russians end up claiming for Russia proper. I suspect, it very much depends on like how the war goes. I suspect that what they may end up doing is claiming the four regions in their entirety. So like Zaporozhye, Kherson, Lugansk, Donetsk, and of course Crimea, in addition to that, as being Russian territory. That they will do. They will then put in place a Kiev government, I think, that is essentially one which operates on Russian terms. So it'll be one that maybe is restored with a variation of the constitution of 2014, prior to 2014, which is based on some of those personnel who are the Ukrainian government in exile. And the Russians will probably say that, well, we're restoring Ukrainian democracy, but we're going to do it under certain conditions. And the new Ukrainian government will probably sign up to a series of legal documents, including some kind of union state with Belarus and Russia. The far-right parties, all of the Maidan parties will be banned. All of their cadre will probably be imprisoned. But this will probably be done inside Ukraine itself. So I suspect the Russians will restore a Ukrainian state. They will argue to the US and the West that all of the deals, all of the contracts, everything that was signed after 2014 was signed by a government that was completely illegitimate. And therefore, the West cannot go making claims to Ukrainian debt or to Ukrainian assets that have been obtained by the likes of BlackRock, because essentially this was done by a coup regime with no legitimacy. That's what they will probably argue. They will then say that this government, maybe headed on an interim basis by Yanukovych, will rebuild Ukraine with Russian assistance. And what you'll get is a lot of involvement from Russia's allies. So you'll get Chinese picking up a lot of contracts and business in Ukraine. Indians probably picking up some contracts and business in Ukraine. Other nations such as maybe perhaps Indonesia, Malaysia, other BRICS nations or associated countries picking up business in Ukraine. And Ukraine will be reoriented completely. It will, the bulk of it will remain nominally independent, but it will be swung decisively into the orbit of, again, the Union state with Belarus and Russia. What you'll have is, my guess is, a combined defense area of Ukraine, Belarus and Russia, with like a combined military command, where to basically not risk any Maidan type event ever happening again. All of those parties associated with the events of the last 10 years will be banned. A lot of their leaders will be imprisoned. Many of them will probably be killed. Maybe not officially, but unofficially. And that is how it may end up. Because that's a more appealing prospect. And it solves some issues for the Russians with regard to legalities than just directly annexing the whole thing. That, to my mind, makes... Because you can argue... I mean, bear in mind the Russian government is very legalistic in some senses. They are concerned with how things are presented to their BRICS partners. So they will want to present this in the following way. They'll say that they're restoring the government that was overthrown in 2014, that due to the actions of the Maidan regime, the four regions in the east, which are predominantly Russian, have decided to join Russia. Now, as to the fate of Odessa and the rest of the coast, Nikolaev, etc., that's open to debate. They may try to, again, restore a purge, a non-fascist Ukrainian government with rule over with a coastline and rule over Odessa to make sure that it is viable. Because if they're going to be basically co-managing this state, they want it to be viable. They also want to restore Ukraine, to argue that restore a version of Ukraine, albeit one tied into strong agreements, both military and economic, with Russia. So they can argue that, look, we were not involved in the war of conquest. This began because of a coup. This began because the Russian peoples of these regions voted to join Russia, and we're not going to turn back on that. The rest of Ukraine we have restored to a democratic state that it was, arguably, before 2014, and we're restoring it as a brotherly nation of Russia. That is where I think this will end. The West will scream, the West will shout, the West will say you've put in place a puppet regime, but what they're really mad about is that the Russians have killed their puppet regime. That is what I think will happen. The West will be not overwhelmed, but will be swamped with a variety of Ukrainian fascist organizations, all of whom who will flee Ukraine, and the West will set them up in, well, Britain, Canada, the United States as exiles. The Maidan regime will go into exile either in Western Europe or the United States and serve as an exiled government, and will shout and scream and try to send terrorist operations into the renewed Ukraine. The renewed Ukraine will be rebuilt along Russian lines, with a Russian-influenced security and military apparatus. Any talk of neutrality will go. It'll be swung solidly into being essentially a Union States type arrangement. That's a rather long answer to your question, Jacob the Squirrel, but I hope it is a comprehensive one. Eduardo says, how is the world getting out of this great economic depression? No more growth of overproduction, no more state give outs. Any other alternative? Trump melee measures? Well, it's not the world that's in a recession, is it, to answer Eduardo's question? It's the West, principally. Now, how does the West get out of it? Well, the attacks on Russia and Iran and China is one way that they're going to hope to get out of it. The other way they're going to hope to get out of it is to attack their own domestic working class, to reduce the living standards of the domestic working class to the point where they can be profitably employed in manufacturing industries again. But that's going to take wholesale attacks, which the US and the British and the French states might not be capable of delivering. So yeah, Trump melee measures is going to be one way of doing it, but that comes with great risks, and it will intensify class war in inside the imperialist countries, especially as their imperial projects fail in various different locations. Could the USA implode like the Soviet Union? No, because, well, not that way. What you got in the Soviet Union was the development of a treacherous comprador clique who, thanks to years of decay in the party and the state, managed to basically collapse the state with minimal resistance. That's not the case in the USA. You have a ruling class that is parasitic and incapable of developing the nation in a positive direction, but you don't have a clique that want to actively destroy the state, because you did have that in the USSR. So that isn't going to work. To answer David's question, that analogy doesn't work for the USA. You could end up, I mean, if the situation gets bad, with, I don't know how strong regional bourgeoisies are in the United States, but if there are regional bourgeois, maybe those with a lot of raw resources in their states, like the Texan bourgeois. But that, I mean, regional bourgeois in the United States are very much tied to the national picture. They're very much underpinned by the national banking system, by Wall Street. So, in my opinion, the only way you get like secessionism in the United States is if there's a strong enough regional or statewide bourgeois who are thinking that they can get a better deal for themselves opting out of the United States. If that happens, I know there's a California secessionist group. There's always been some characters like staging like Texas secessionist events, but how serious those are, I'm not sure. I don't think they are at the moment. But in my view, like, the only way you get actual implosion, secessionism of states, is if a bourgeois in either in a state or a group of states thinks that they can do better as their own thing outside of the United States. And in my view, that won't happen for a while yet. Hello to More Time Needed from Skegness. Right. Michael says ACP have zero intellectual depth. Maupin has turned creationist preacher. I don't see how you can argue that the ACP have zero intellectual depth. I just don't think that's true. On what basis are you making that assumption? Or what makes you say that? T.G. Wilson says, Brian Berletic had a solid take on the Trump administration recently, linking it back to a report from 1992 in the New York Times. No challenge to U.S. hegemony will be tolerated. Well, I mean, Berletic is somebody I disagree with on a number of issues, but I saw that video and he was essentially correct. He's putting out the correct view there, in a non-Marxist way, but like the trajectory of US policy is uninterrupted since the end of the Cold War, since the US emerged as the sole superpower. And US imperialism will not change. The priorities have remained the same for over 30 years. It doesn't matter who's in. It's just that there's slightly different emphasis to the policies and the choices made, but they are, of course, all in the same direction. I covered this myself when I was talking about Trump's cabinet appointments. But yeah, Berletich's point is solid on that. Almir says, I felt the burn in 2016 and got burned. That was it for me. Same with me and Corbyn. I mean, I didn't necessarily believe in him, but I followed his movements along. But as Finnish Leica says on Rumble, yeah, I considered myself an intelligent person. It's uncanny how long it took me to see how Anglo-Saxon imperialists operate. I think it was the Ukraine war propaganda that finally helped me awaken. Yeah. I thought of myself, much like you, as somebody who understood certain things. But it's the Ukraine war that really brought it home to me just how deeply imperialist Britain is in a practical sense. But also like how deep Western chauvinism runs. And then the Palestinian War of National Liberation, which is what's going on, was the other thing. These two things really drove the point home to me and made me understand imperialism as a system much better than I did previously. So yeah, I mean, but the point is, I'm 42. I was 41 when the war started. This is this shows like you never stop learning, and you should never stop educating yourself, because you're always going to get caught out by some new development. But the last 2 years have been a real political education for me, and I hope that is informing my commentary on these things correctly. Let's go through some more comments here. Oh, by the way, the term Stalinist, I mainly use it as a joke. I know some people in the world do use it sincerely. The reason why I don't call myself a Stalinist is because Stalin never approved of using that term. He was always insistent that he was just simply a follower of Lenin's teachings. Rusa says, I'm one of the last millennials, 1996. Well, congratulations. Welcome to a doomed generation. Nah, I'm just kidding. Daniel says, look at me, I'm Gen Z turned to communism. Well, I mean, beware of bourgeois media doing broad strokes bullshit, basically. I was told that I would be a self-seeking shark as a millennial who was always looking for new opportunities to expand business, and that I would basically be a perfect late capitalist subject. Turned out none of that was true in my case. None of it's true. It's all bullshit from the bourgeoisie. They're trying to convince you that you should be something because you are a particular age. This is nonsense. Clash of Generations is an incredibly poor way to understand anything. Always was. Understanding that the CPGB as a small party doesn't get involved in community work like we see in the ACP and the YCL in Britain. Well, we get involved strongly in trade union struggle. Wherever there is working class struggle and we can get involved in it, we do so. Moving on. All right, Me Panther, you want out of the channel? There you go. Fuck off out of it then. Yeah, it's a bit strange when people come on here and say, I'm out of here. Well, why did you bother in the first place? Do yourself a favour, and next time you're driving, don't bother to hit the brakes. Philip Hall says, the Skripals were not poisoned with Novichok, but Boris Berezovsky's mate was killed round the corner from me. His name was Nikolai Glushkov. I think Berezovsky was a Russian Federation plant. Berezovsky's dead, isn't he? It is a fact that he die. And he reported to have hanged himself. Probably got offed, quite deservedly so. He's a scumbag. Right. Oh God. You mentioned the ACP once, and like you are flooded with tossers just repeating bullshit. I think a lot of these people are probably fucking FBI. You know. Rusa says, Tavarish Michal would want to join your Polish People's Republic special. I asked him if he'd be interested. He likes the idea. Poland has two fathers, Lenin and Stalin, but the Polish people for the last 35 years have been indoctrinated. They believe Russia has always been our enemy. It's a lie. It's quite the opposite. Polish helped build Russia and other way around. Well, I mean, this will be solved when Polish socialism re-emerges. And what happened to Poland is a tragedy. Like, it went from being one of the most industrialized parts of the old socialist bloc to being like a semi-deindustrialized place dominated by like bitter reactionaries in the Catholic Church, you know. But Polish socialism will re-emerge. I am convinced of this. Trump wants the end of the Ukraine proxy under his belt, but he doesn't understand Russia has no reason to give any concessions. Yeah, like if Trump actually thinks that he's going to make a phone call and end this war, then he's fucking dumb. Well, I think he is dumb. He's dumb and lazy. Arcane Eclectic says Russia will not offer any peace terms before they have full control of Kharkov, Kherson, Nikolaev and Odessa. Possibly. We'll have to see what the Russian plan for all that is. Good afternoon to Davey, who joins us. Jacob the Squirrel says, the royals, that's the royal family, make money from dead soldiers and people living in Lancaster and Cornwall. If they have no heir to leave money, then it goes to the crown. Yeah, the British state is just a series of organised scams to transfer money to the ruling class. That's basically it. Just scrolling through some more comments here. Yes, to answer the question, KPRF are a substantive party. They have correctly identified the struggle against imperialism as the primary contradiction at this moment in time, and that's why they require. They are rallying behind the war effort right now. Of course, when the war ends and U.S. imperialism is defeated, of course, other contradictions will emerge. But at the moment, they support the war effort, and the substance of their criticism of the government is, in many ways, just they are pressing the government as to how to fight the war better by drawing more on the Soviet legacy. Bisquick says the Constitution, that is the US Constitution, was basically a brokerage between Eastern banking Hamiltonian federalists and landowning slavocracy Jeffersonian anti-federalist against any populist democratic rule. Interesting. Just scrolling through the comments. Hello to everybody who's on Rumble, by the way. Hello to Edward. Oh, by the way, we have a Baltic viewing contingent. I'm going to be recording a special podcast with a Latvian comrade, Isko Lat, on Monday of next week. So be ready for that one. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. So, why do so many Poles hate the Russians? Well, I mean, there's a various historical grudges there. There is the Tsarist era occupation of part of Poland, which is, a good part of the reason why. But in more recent years, it's because of the triumph of Polish reaction. Polish reaction was anti-Soviet, anti-communist, and then anti-Russian, basically. And this is the core of the problem. Like the defeat of Polish socialism and the collapse of Polish socialism basically led to like a rabid group of reactionaries taking power, who have essentially spent the last 30 years like destroying the Polish industrial base and increasing the rates of poverty amongst the working class. And so the more that they would make things worse for the majority of people in Poland, the more they up the ante with regard to the rhetoric regarding Russia and how it's all the Russians and the communists' fault, etc., etc. This is the standard bullshitting, really. But this will all fall apart in the end, because when the European economy goes south, or European economies go south, when the EU goes south, which it will quite soon, relatively soon, when US power diminishes, like these Polish reactionaries are going to be left high and fucking dry and nowhere to go. And at that point, the class struggle in Poland will re-emerge, and the positive legacies of the Polish People's Republic will re-emerge again as well. I am absolutely convinced of this. Yeah, and as Rusa pointed out, the Russian Tsardom did like ban the Polish language and do a bunch of other reactionary anti-Polish shit. So some of that resentment towards the Tsarist period is justified. It's not justified when it comes to the socialist period, where the Soviets actually aided the reconstruction of Poland and helped it become like an industrial powerhouse for a while. Then the capitalists came back and destroyed it. Daniel's question: are there any good sources to learn about the Polish People's Republic? There's a book by Albert Szymanski, comrade, which I'll stick in in one of the groups that we're in, so you can get access to it. All right, so we were meant to be doing a show with Kit Clarenberg today, but he seems to have been detained, not literally, I hope. So what we'll do is we'll come back when he's available to actually do this program. But until then, I'm going to draw things to a close for today. And I will say thank you to all 304 of you watching. This has turned into a bit of a Q&A, but that's no bad thing. Tomorrow morning, going to be answering a question from Comrade Jason regarding fascism. Going to be doing that on a Patreon stream. So tune in on Patreon tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m. to hear that one. And I'll be back again for the usual stream in the evening. We also now have our technical difficulties sorted out, so we are, of course, using a proper microphone again, so it's less tinny. So, uploads to Patreon will be done later today. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. I'll now draw things to a close and say, please join me again tomorrow.